Hey there, I am Gary Parrish. Welcome back. CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, leaky black. Look at that shirt. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, honor Brandon Davies the only way that's appropriate. Smash that like button. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast, please go do that wherever you listen to podcasts like Apple and Spotify. Let's get into it today. We are continuing our 2026 Summer Shootaround series. This is, I believe, episode 14, and we are turning our attention to the North Carolina Tar Heels. Before we look ahead, quick recap of last season. Finished 24-9, 12-6 in the ACC, tied for fourth in the conference. Got a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. Lost to VCU in overtime in the round of 64. 5 days after that, UNC fired Hubert Davis and eventually replaced him with former Nuggets coach Michael Malone. Right now, I got the Tar Heels ranked 25th in the top 25 and 1. Is that too high, too low, or just about right? I'm going to ask Matt Norlander next. First, though, we got to get a word from our partners.
See you Sunday, Jim. Whoa! Delivery.
Thanks, Kurt.
You like that? See you Sunday, Jim.
Sunday.
See you Sunday. See you Sunday.
See you Sunday.
I just got my pilot's license. See you Sunday!
The whole town can feel it. Sunday's coming.
See you every Sunday this fall on CBS and Paramount Plus.
See you Sunday.
That's my boy Cam Skydoo.
All right, Norlander, good to see you. North Carolina, I got them 25th in the top 25 and 1. Do you love it or do you loathe it?
Neither, but I'm not yet convinced this is a top 25 team. I think it can get there. I think if a couple things had gone a different way, this would have been easily a top 20 team. We can talk about that in a sec if you'd like. But we gotta figure something out off the top of the show here. All right. They got a new coach. You kind of yada-yada'd over the fact that, and you know what? Maybe it should be yada-yada. Carolina fans are ready to move on. But UNC has a new coach because, in part, it had the largest blown lead in a first-round tournament game of any school ever. So that was also an issue there.
Also, they have a new coach because, can we be honest?
Caleb Wilson got hurt.
That's what it really is.
Yes.
There's actually two reasons North Carolina has a new coach. Caleb Wilson got injured, and that freed them up to do, as an administration, what they wanted to do anyway, which is move on from Hubert Davis. I think that's the truth.
Yeah, they're coming off of back-to-back round of 64 losses, Carolina is. That had never happened in program history. So they start anew, and we can talk about Malone in general in just a second, but we got to figure this out. Is it Mike Malone or Michael Malone?
Michael, my understanding is that it is Michael, and if you do a Mike, that is considered disrespectful. Like, he ain't going to punch you or spit on you or anything.
Oh, is it? So you've already done the research on this.
I was told very early on he prefers Michael, not Mike. And if it is Mike, that's wrong.
It feels like when they're doing well, it's going to be Michael. Michael Malone and this Carolina team, they've got it going. Look at how they're going in year one. They're doing well. But if there's a bad loss, this Mike Malone guy. I mean,
this Mike Malone guy.
When things are good, it's Michael. When things it's just also if you're going to get short with someone, if you get angry, it's going to be, come on, Mike. It's not going to be, come on, Michael. But I and prepping for the show, I was like, I hear Mike and Michael constantly. We gotta land on one or the other. So you say we should do Michael.
Here's where we're at. The night of December 19th, if North Carolina is undefeated and coming off a victory over Kentucky at the Garden in the CBS Sports Classic, he will be Michael Malone and the best hire of the coaching cycle in 2026. If, on the other hand, he's a 4-loss coach at that point, coming off a loss to Kentucky, he's going to be this guy, Mike Malone. Hadn't been in college in 30 years, and we thought it was a good idea to bring him back. And now look at us. So can somebody call Hubert? See what he's doing. It can go either way. I believe it will go the former rather than the latter. I think this is going to go well. But I do agree with you, even though I have them in the top 25 and 1, it is not obviously a no-brainer top 25 roster. And for whatever it's worth, and it does give me a little pause, like Bart Torvik's got North Carolina down very, very low, 44th, one spot behind LSU. And LSU, I heard, only has like 4 players out of respect for Jaden Daniels.
Exactly. But 44 is maybe there might be something with, or maybe not. I don't know how Torvik runs his preseason algo, but Malone doesn't have any history coaching at the Division I level as a head coach. His last time coaching college basketball was with Manhattan from 1999 to 2001. So I don't know if that affects it or not. Regardless, if you want to have some hesitation, I think that's entirely understandable. Carolina bringing on Malone, by the way, marked the first time since Frank McGuire in 52 didn't have a previous UNC direct lineage connection overall. So obviously this is a pretty big swing, pretty big reboot. We don't have to go through the carousel stuff again. We talked about that plenty. People know why Malone is now the coach and not sitting head coach didn't wind up going there. Just a nugget here. Right now, Carolina has a head coach in football and men's basketball that have won professional championships. Not only is Carolina the first school to have active football and men's basketball coaches that have won championships, there has never been a school ever that is employed at any point in its history, regardless of the timeline, 2 people that have done that. Carolina happens to have that right now, which is kind of fascinating. Before we get into the roster that is, let's just briefly touch on the roster that could have been.
Yeah.
I mean, Henry Vasar wasn't going to come back to school. We thought he should. He was given a top 25 grade by Fink in our lead up to the draft. He winds up going in the 50s and gets himself a nice contract ultimately with the Hawks, but just a super up and down bumpy thing. If Vasar was on the roster, like we just had our candid coaches last week about who's the best player in college basketball. I'm not sure if Vasar would have gotten a vote there, but he would have been a preseason All-American, and he's not on the roster. And then coincidentally enough, people that are keeping up in real time with the show, GP, and just listen to the candid coaches, to the shoot around with Kelsey and Trimble. I mean, he's a player who's not at Carolina because they literally don't have the roster space. I mean, probably didn't have the cap, honestly. I know Kelsey wasn't going to talk numbers. By pure coincidence, I talked to a coach just a few days ago. Told me he got the call on Trimble. Just guess that. Let's see if you can guess the number. Coach says gets the call on Trimble from his agent.
And said, if you want to get involved, it's going to cost this.
Yes. What do you think the number was?
3.5.
3.7.
There you go. That's
3.7. Like, so I think the most conservative estimate at the end of it was probably 3.5 for Seth Trimble, which is he's a good player, but woo.
Well, I think he is a good player. And I put him in our dribble handoff as the 5th-year guy who just got eligible, who's going to have the biggest impact on his new school, because I'll keep it simple, and maybe this is too simple, but as of, say, February 10th, or, when on the day Caleb Wilson got hurt, what Seth Trimble was last season was the second best player on a top 10 team.
Yes.
And I think he can be the second best player on a top 10 team again, because I think Louisville's a top 10 team.
It certainly is possible. And
if you had him back at Carolina,
I mean,
Vasar just apparently did not want to do college basketball anymore, or college anymore, or whatever. I still think it was a mistake, because these are jobs. These aren't like just, hey, what do you want to do with your life? Like, these are real great paying jobs, and he left money on the table to go be an NBA player in this moment and walk away from all of the money that would have been there in Chapel Hill. And then the Seth Trimble thing, it's clear they didn't have a scholarship open. It's unclear whether, even if they did, they would have had the money available.
Right.
But other schools clearly planned for this. And so is that, and we're not talking about fireable offenses, but is that a mistake? Is that a first coaching blunder in terms of how to handle your roster construction? Because there is a scenario where I can just say this: there are other staffs who were anticipating a group of players like this becoming eligible and actually holding back roster spots, scholarships, and money, and clearly North Carolina did.
Yeah, and we were both in Vegas. I wrote a whole story on it. There's going to be guys in the summer league that are going to try and go back to college. Seth Trimble, quite literally one of those players. Jackson Kohler, who just committed to BYU, another such player. There's a handful of those guys, GP. And yes, a number of coaches were obviously bracing for that possibility. How unusual was this? Carolina put out a statement about Seth Trimble, which speaks to Seth, obviously, and speaks to the Carolina family and the dynamic there. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure we have seen that in the past few years where the school from the outgoing player, long after that player had left the school, then put out a statement saying, "Hey, listen, we wish him nothing but the best. He's a Tar Heel for life," and all that. But that was obviously done as a little bit of damage control because he was a veteran guy, hit a huge shot to beat Duke last season, obviously an elite college level defender. If he was on this Carolina roster, unquestionably, in my opinion, a top 25 preseason team. He's not, so it goes. Malone has an interesting and eclectic crew, and I'm not sure how this is going to go. My last thing on Malone here, and then let's get into the roster. We are pre-taping this as we do all the summer shoot-arounds. GP and I have not swapped votes and quotes yet for our candid coaches who was the best offseason hire, but I did get a handful of votes for Malone. He did get represented. So I'll share a few of these right here, right now, because in fact, I think our candid coaches will have come out If not, it's going to be close to coming out by the time you're taking this podcast here. So here's what a couple of coaches told me about Malone in voting for him as the best offseason hire. It's a question we ask every year with candid coaches. One, I earmuffs, I guess, put the explicit. I'm going to drop the F-bomb here because I was one coach who voted for Malone. I was talking to him on the phone. And I said, "Who do you think it is?" And then, I went through all the high hiring, right? Just as a refresher. Get through the list. Oh, it's Michael Malone. It's not even close. I said, "Okay, that's interesting." Some guys haven't voted for him because they're not sure. Or no, the coach asked, "Why wouldn't it be him?" I said, "Well, some other coaches aren't voting for him because he hasn't coached in college in a quarter century." And before the word century could come out of my mouth, this coach goes, "I don't give a flying fuck. It ain't even close. Michael Malone won an NBA championship. He is the best hire by far. It's not even close." So that's one. Another one, this is a little bit more long-winded. On Malone, he's going to have to make some adjustments to his in-game strategy because of the rules. But he was a players coach in the NBA. He seems to be sticking with his NBA roots and how he's building a staff and program, and will be able to sell recruits on NBA development, how their players translate immediately to the NBA style of play, etc. He's just got to be open to in-game strategy adjustments and not be stubborn, which from what I'm told, he will be fine with. This is assuming he doesn't bolt for the NBA after a year or two. And then another one, Malone is an incredible coach with NBA pedigree and has proven he's going to work incredibly hard on the recruiting trail. He also did a good job of putting together a blend of college and NBA experience on his staff. So Carolina fans, your guy, I don't think, unless GP got a massive return, he's not going to win the poll, but he's probably top 5, top 6 overall. Again, GP and I haven't traded notes on this yet, but that's a good sign. I was curious when we asked this question, how many votes Malone would get and where he would register. And quite clearly, even though he has not been in the college game for 2.5 decades, his NBA pedigree and I think in general his reputation, like he is a guy who has been seen, I think I haven't said this on the show, he didn't take this job and was looking to play golf 3 days a week. Right. He was very eager, enthusiastic. I think, from the agent side, as they were trying to figure out who was going to get sent to this Carolina roster, even the guys that didn't get, they got a good read off of Malone immediately. He kind of hit the ground running. And so that's a good early sign. Again, we got to play the games. So we'll see how it happens there. But going in, I think this has gone about as Seth Trimble not going back to Carolina's side. This has gone about as well as you could ask for so far for Carolina.
I have not added up my votes for that question, but I do, just off the top of my head, believe Michael Malone will be in the top 5 of vote getters. Frankly, I think he would get my vote. I'm the idea that he hasn't been. I echo what that coach told you. Plus a second F-bomb. Yeah. Like the idea that he's just going to be baffled by college basketball after working in the NBA is ridiculous. It might work the other way, where it's a little harder to figure out the NBA than it is college basketball from an X's and O's perspective. But I don't think he's going to have any problem. He's not going to get out there and be like at halftime going, "Oh my God, I'm getting X and O to death out there by the head coach at some bottom tier ACC school." He's going to be fine. As long as they give him the resources and the people helping him roster build are good at it. And I think that's the biggest thing. He has acknowledged that when he got the job and, was on the EYBL circuit, I mean, he was there shaking hands and watching, but he don't know what he didn't know who he's seeing. Like, he didn't know who that is. And so he was a little blind heading into this offseason. And so the people he's surrounded by are going to have to help him roster build. But if they do their job well, I don't have any doubt he can do his job well. So my only question about whether this will be a success or not is that, and then how long does he want to do it? He's only 54 years old, so he could keep, he can stay in the sport for a while. But, ask Dusty May, once you're in the sport for a while, if you've got NBA opportunities, you might want to jump right back to that thing. And I think he has acknowledged his initial instincts were, I want to get back into the NBA. And then that wasn't popping the way I guess he had hoped it would pop. And then literally one of the best jobs in college basketball, is available to him, and they keep coming back to him, and he finally accepts it. But if whatever happens next year happens, and then another NBA job reaches out to him, that could be the thing that cuts this short more so, in my mind at least, than him just flailing and struggling and not being good at this. I think he's going to be good at this, in part because the success, like, you don't have to know anything about him. Just got to look at the Wikipedia page and you can know he's an accomplished basketball coach. But this matters to me as well. When it got announced, the next head coach at North Carolina is going to be Michael Malone. I don't know if I was in studio that moment with like Pete Gillen and Wally Zerbiak, but eventually I was. And Michael Malone used to work for Pete, and Wally used to play for Michael Malone. And it was like, they weren't saying this for any, they weren't on camera trying to, they were just like, oh, he's really good. Like Wally was like, excellent basketball coach. Like one of the best coaches I've ever been around in terms of just understanding the game. And so the people I know who have been around him really speak highly of him, of a basketball mind. I think this is going to go well.
It's exciting because he could be there for a year, or he could be there for 15 years. No one really knows. But the fact that he has won an NBA title, I think that's that'll always be in the background. Like, just the fact that, if there's going to be an NBA opportunity that maybe arises. But hey, listen, you take the swing on Malone. Let's see if it can work. Let's go to the roster here. The one player who's back of real consequence was Jaren Stevenson, 6'10", 4-man, averaged 8 points, 4.5 boards a season ago. So he'll be a factor in the rotation, obviously. And then you get into all of the additions here. They bring in and GP. I look at the roster and I see, okay, you told me this was a top 3 team in the ACC. Yes, I can buy that. But if you told me like it was just a little bit skittish, little herky-jerky stop and go, and this team finished 6th, 7th, or 8th in the league, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. They've got the person who put up more points per game last season than anyone that's coming in is Terrence Brown out of Utah. Now, he was on a terrible team, but he was a guy that really, 19.9 points a game, was top 3 in the Big 12 in scoring, almost 4 assists per game. And I thought was clearly a really good get for them. He was the number 43 transfer in 247 Sports. So he's in. Matt Abel, who was just playing cross town for NC State, he comes aboard. I think he's expected to be game over game the most reliable player on the crew, and I think that makes plenty of sense. Another top 50 transfer, averaged 8.8 points, 3.4 rebounds, but they want those numbers from a scoring perspective. They want those to double for sure. Neo Avdilas, who played for Virginia Tech and got some early season buzz, and then he kind of flattened out. In fact, in non-conference, Avdilas averaged 14.6 points, versus just 10.5 points versus ACC opponents. He shot 44% from the field in the non-con, which isn't that great, but still only 35% from the floor against ACC opponents there. Dropped down to 28% from 3 GP as opposed to 37. So can he make a big jump? Like, I kind of think he needs to be a guy. He averaged 12 points, 3 boards, and 4.5 assists last season for Virginia Tech, but game over game just wasn't a guy that you could ultimately rely on. Let's see if he can make the jump. They got a transfer from Buffalo, Angelo Brizzi. They got another one from Northwestern who's a big, Cade Bennerman. And then the guy who's the most intriguing is Seyon Keita, 5-man, 6'11", from Mali, played in Barcelona. He's thought to be a potential first-round pick next year, GP. So can he also jump and make an immediate impact? We wait and see there. The freshman to know, Maximo Adams by far is the one to know in my opinion. 6'7", small forward, 4-star from Chatsworth, California, 30th ranked prospect. So not a 5-star, not a top 10 guy, but expected to get some real run. And then they got a 6'6" wing from Fort Lauderdale, top 100 player named Kevin Thomas. So a little bit of a mixed bag. I think people were expecting Carolina to get maybe one more high profile, like top 15, 20 level player. That didn't happen. They also lost Vaystar. What can you do? You've got him 25th overall. What stands out to you about the roster? Just the team collectively that has enough for you. Aside from Malone's chops, I get that, but you obviously have enough here. I know you're kind of splitting hairs, but you could have them not ranked, and you have chose to have them ranked heading into the season.
Yeah, they also added Cameron Finns, a transfer from South Dakota, and he was a late addition, 7-foot center that could I emphasize the word could start up front. 14.5 points, 8.7 rebounds, 1.5 blocks, and 25.3 minutes per game at South Dakota last season. So when you look at the transfer portal additions, here's what I see. Obviously, guys that are intriguing, like Abdullah. I know you remember, you sort of referenced it, but let's put a number on it. Early, he had that 33-point game against Providence. Mm-hmm. I think it was the second game of the year, and it was like, I remember on the podcast, it was like, so, I mean, it's DeBonsa and Boozer and Peter, and now this guy at Virginia Tech going to getting 33, and then he cooled off. That was as good as it got. But he's an intriguing prospect. The first thing I noticed, we've touched on this, but like if you just, let's say that Terrence Brown and Cameron Finns are starting at the 2 and 5. You just replace them with Seth Trimble and Henry Vaysar, and you've got a whole different team, probably something that most people have in the top 15, if not top 10. As it is, it's still an intriguing roster, but this does stand out to me. I talk to coaches every once in a while who will say things like, yeah, we added this guy. I just love the way he won. He impacted winning. He was a winner. I love that he's coming from a winning program. I love that they went to back-to-back Sweet 16s. They emphasize players coming from winning cultures and having accomplished something that could be deemed success. And basically none of these guys have.
Correct. This applied to a team a year ago, GP, as you're talking about this. Man, I wish I could pull it because who was it? There was a team that this exact scenario applied to, and I was a little bit skeptical. Maybe they wound up doing, I just can't remember. Keep going, but we talked about this with another team a year ago where they brought in some dudes, and every single one had like attributes where you understood why, but none of them came from teams that either made the tournament or won 20+.
And that would be my concern here. You got a bunch of guys who have played real minutes at the Division I level, produced at the Division I level, had big games at the Division I level, but how many of them actually been a part of something successful? Virginia Tech was 8-10 last season in a so-so ACC. Utah was 10-22. That's where Terrence Brown went to school. Matt Abel, played the NCAA tournament, but NC State finished tied for 7th in the ACC. They were at best okay. And then South Dakota finished 284th at KenPom. That's where Cameron Finns went to school. So if these guys are going to come together to win, they will have to come together and win in a way that literally none of them won last season, or else this will be deemed disappointing.
Yeah. It's the 8th ranked transfer class, according to 247 Sports, by the way. So, top 10 esteem. Let's see what Malone can do with this group. And to me, this feels like this kind of goes hand in hand with the schedule that we're going to talk about here, but definitely give them some time, and I will give them time. We'll be patient with them on the podcast because it's a very big reboot. It's not a total reboot. There's actually some guys from the staff that were actually carryovers from the Hubert Davis era.
He has Michael surrounded himself with some Carolina people to try to
which I've heard some people are not a fan that he did that. Some people wanted a complete reset. Regardless, nevertheless, it is.
Well, I guess to that, I would just say this, and I would apply this everywhere. I do think it can be important, particularly when you're the first guy since this last guy a
institutional
million years
knowledge.
I got all that. I think that's important. What I would never do, and I don't mean this just about North Carolina. I mean this about anywhere where stuff like this is often important, Kansas and wherever. But I want to have some people around who have real North Carolina ties, who went to school here, worked here, really know the people who work in the cafeteria, everybody, right? I want some of them around, but I ain't keeping people just because because they've been here. Like you can either help me do my job or not. And that's the first thing I got to figure out. And then if you happen to be from North Carolina, that's a bonus. But the idea that you would just keep a bunch of people because, they got a bunch of blue polos, that I'm
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that.
I hear you. Let's get to the schedule here. So it's gonna, if things go the way Carolina fans hope they go in November, it's just gonna be a quiet month. They have 2 games versus non-con opponents that are from the high major level. Home against Georgia, that's solid, not a standout game, but that's the first one. That's on November 13. And then in the Dick Vitale Invitational in Charlotte on November 27, they'll play against the West Virginia team that I think could really become something of a trendy team to be top half of the Big 12. So keep an eye on that if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you, Josh. He's got 6 of the, how about this, 8 non-conference high major opponents from North Carolina. So that's what the intriguing part is. So Georgia, then West Virginia. Then they get Arkansas in the SEC ACC Challenge. That game is going to be in Chapel Hill. Then they're home against Butler on December 6th. They're at Georgetown on December 12th. It's their road game in non-con. They're home against NC State. Sorry, not home. They play NC State in Greensboro. You are hearing me correctly. We'll double back to that in a second. And then they play Kentucky in New York City in the CBS Sports Classic on December 19. And then they've got Illinois against Nashville on January 30. So just to recap here, Malone sought out to play, and I do love this, 8 high major teams in the non-conference. One of the 8 is NC State and Greensboro because the ACC, given its scheduling constraints, UNC and Carolina and NC State were going to play twice. So they found a way to make it happen. It is a non-conference game in Greensboro. They just announced it a short while ago, earlier this month. I love the fact that they did it. On some level, it's insane they had to do it, but I like the fact that just they were willing to make it happen because it quite clearly and understandably and obviously means a hell of a lot to both of those fan bases. Yes, Duke and Carolina is the rivalry, but it still means something for both of them to play twice a year in basketball, so they get that done. But I will note, GP, home Georgia against West Virginia in the proverbial backyard of Charlotte, Arkansas at home at the Dean Dome, home against Butler, at Georgetown. We'll see on Georgetown, right? NC State right there close by. Then it's Kentucky in Midtown Manhattan, and then it's Illinois and Nashville. So it's 8 high majors. There's some teams out in here that aren't projected to make the NCAA tournament, and a lot of them are close by. I think this is solid. Is it on the level of UConn's or Duke's non-con? No, it's not, but I think this is a pretty awesome swing. Like, Kentucky could wind up being pretty good. We think Illinois is going to be a top 5 team. We do have at least one true road game. It's against Georgetown. I wish that was a little bit more, but whatever. Even North Carolina at Georgetown, like, for the nostalgia brain, like, it still has some, maybe Georgetown will be good. We'll see. West Virginia will be good. Arkansas obviously could be a top 15 team. Thoughts on the schedule, and then what do you got for the regular season record?
I like it. It's got big brands in there, power conference brands, but not all of them are going to be great basketball teams. So I think it's maybe not the most challenging schedule, but it's got a lot of interesting names on it. I've got them 11-3 in the non-league portion of their schedule. Lose to Illinois and Nashville. I think Illinois is a preseason top 5 team. That game's not till January, but it is a non-league game in January. I'll have them losing, I guess, to Kentucky at the Garden, just because I have Kentucky higher ranked in this moment. Neutral court, I'll give the edge there, and then maybe lose one more along the way. But 11-3 in the non-league, I think that's perfectly fine for Michael Malone in year 1. And then I've got him projected 5th in the ACC, 25th in the top 25 and 1, but 5th in the ACC behind Duke, Louisville, Virginia, and Miami. So let's go 12-6 in the ACC. Is that right? 12-6, 18 games?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so let's go 12-6 in the ACC, 11-3 in the non-league, 23-9 heading into the ACC tournament, something like a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament.
We've got the same seed. Mark me now for a 7 for the Tar Heels on Selection Sunday. I'll say 22-10. I'll say there's one more L maybe in non-con. We'll see how that goes. Carolina fans, if I tell you 22-10. Do you take it or do you chance it? They're probably going to chance it, but year 1, that roster, we wait and see. There's just, there's a lot of factors in play here. But I'll say, I think 22-10 would be a nice year 1 debut for Michael Malone. I mean, if I tell you it's 20-12, he's Mike Malone. Okay,
That's
let's keep in mind what the arrangement here is. But we both agree they land on the 7 line, and we'll see if they can overshoot expectations there. It's one of the most popular programs, obviously, in the country, one of the biggest brands. Why we included on the shoot around. There's just a lot of intrigue and again a lot of excitement about what can this be? Like Hubert Davis's tenure ending the way that it did was extremely, extremely turbulent. And so now, after the constant, unending, like, we're good, oh, we suck, we're good, like there was a lot of that. Now, Carolina fans want to see if Malone can get them right back up to the level where the expectation there is top 5 program in the country. That's not going to happen year one. I'd be shocked if it did, but I'm excited to see what can happen here as he takes his first tour of Chapel Hill.
All right, let's call it a show. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle. He's a legend. Huck Larnell Hormuz. Go subscribe to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast wherever you subscribe to pods like Apple, Spotify. More of us than there are of them. That needs to be reflected in the comments. So do that, and we will talk to you again real soon. Until then, take care.